All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Big Data London. Thank you for taking the time to come and see this talk today. My name is Rob Davis, and I lead the product management organization for MicroStrategy. Today, I want to talk to you about some of the new and exciting technologies that we're developing at MicroStrategy to help achieve 100% of adoption in the enterprise. One of the challenges that we've had in business intelligence and analytics over the past 20 years that I've been working in the space is how do we provide analytics in a consumable way for everyone in a company to be able to use them effectively in their day-to-day decisions and their day-to-day business. And today I want to talk to you both about technologies that can help achieve that, but also about some of the cultural aspects and some of the overarching development aspects that need to be put in place in order to achieve that adoption. When I spoke to you at this conference last year, I spoke to you about a concept called the intelligent enterprise. And in fact, the mission of MicroStrategy is to make every enterprise into an intelligent enterprise. This differs somewhat than the approach of other analytics vendors, which is to provide best-of-class analytic tools to data scientists or best-of-class analytics tools to business analysts or dashboarding technologies. Really what we're trying to do at MicroStrategy is to provide a single, all-overarching enterprise analytics platform that bridges the gap between the data scientist, the business analyst, and the end user on the front lines of the business that allows all of that good data analytics and insight to be used to make everyone's business life easier and to make it possible for everyone to make better decisions with data. So when we think of this concept of the intelligent enterprise is really the ultimate data-driven organization. And when you find a real intelligent enterprise, it actually has several properties or several components to it that we can actually measure and see how close an organization is getting to becoming an intelligent enterprise. The first one is an intelligent enterprise empowers its entire workforce to do the jobs they love better. We're not trying to change everyone into a data scientist or everyone into a business analyst. We're trying to make people's individual jobs easier and to make it friction-free for them to incorporate data in their day-to-day job. I often use the analogy that if we expect everyone in the enterprise to become a data scientist or an analyst, the equivalent in the English language is expecting everyone to become a poet. Some people don't want to use the language to that depth. Some people just want to read the newspaper, they want to read the trashy romance novel, they want to read the back of the cereal box, right? You have to build tools and build data interaction experiences that are correct for each individual in the enterprise and allow them to do the job they're doing today better. The second property of the intelligent enterprise is it anticipates challenges and opportunities to the business and turns them into profit and growth. So it's more than just analyzing today's data. It's looking at yesterday's data, it's looking forward to what that means for the future, and using machine learning and artificial intelligence appropriately to help people understand what to do with the data that they're presented with. Data is fine to just look at, but it doesn't tell a story unless you figure out where it's telling you to take the business, what decisions it's telling you to make. The third property of the intelligent enterprise is it delivers on trusted data and agility simultaneously. I think we've made a bit of a mistake or a false equivalency in the industry up till now, thinking that the schools of thought of enterprise reporting and of, say, self-service visual data analytics are two separate different things and should be handled by different communities in the enterprise and handled with different technical stacks. The way it should work is a certain community of people who are the analysts and the data scientists should have a lot of freedom to come up with insights in the data, to come up with new algorithms to describe the data and describe where the business should go. But that fails unless those algorithms and that insight is immediately built into business process that everyone else in the organization can leverage and make better decisions on. So we have to bridge that gap between trusted data and giving agility to certain communities of users. Another aspect of the intelligent enterprise, and one that I think is often overlooked, is an intelligent enterprise should encourage the ethical and responsible use of data. It's interesting now that data has become available to more users, there's far more opportunity for business users to make dangerous mistakes with data. Releasing personally identifiable data, for example, or mixing personally identifiable data with sensitive data in a way that's not sufficiently anonymized to satisfy various laws and satisfy governance techniques. So the platform should help people make those ethical and responsible choices when they're using the data. And finally, the intelligent enterprise should have the flexibility to leverage today's data assets, yesterday's data assets, and those of tomorrow. One thing I notice when I talk to my customers is their data landscapes are changing almost monthly. When I first started in the business back at Business Objects 20 years ago, the whole world was relational databases. Then we went into multidimensional databases. Now we have the data lake, in-memory databases. It seems like almost about every 3 months, and the show floor is a good example of this, you get a new technology that you're expected to incorporate into your data landscape. And the problem with that is, every time you incorporate one of these technologies, you end up having to rework your metadata, you have to rework the intelligence you've built into your data analytics system, and at some level you lose some of the intelligence of the enterprise. So a true intelligent enterprise should have an overarching analytics platform that retains that intelligence even as you swap out components of the data landscape underneath and allows you to move forward, always gaining in the amount of intelligence in the enterprise. So given that that's our definition of what an intelligent enterprise is, we should look at what the challenges are to achieve that. And there's 3 main challenges that we see at MicroStrategy in enterprises getting to this level of the intelligent enterprise. The first one is very interesting to me personally because this challenge really hasn't changed in the last 20 years. Today, only 30% of people in the enterprise use data on a day-to-day business to make critical decisions. And this is often the business analyst community or the data science community. But people who are on the shop floor or, say, running an assembly line or are cashiers at the front line of a retail business, they're not using data on a day-to-day basis to make decisions. And we've not provided tools in the industry up till now to make it easy for those people to interact with data and to use it in their day-to-day decisions. So one of our main goals at MicroStrategy is to increase that 30% of adoption all the way up to 100% by providing just the right tools. And I'll get into some of those innovations in a moment. The second one I alluded to earlier as well. The data landscape is changing in diversity and increasing in diversity almost monthly. So in addition to the challenge I told you about before, the one that your data landscape is changing all the time and you're losing intelligence every time you swap out an old data warehouse for a new data lake, for example, this is also happening on the front end. You end up with pockets of almost every conceivable business intelligence tool out there in the business somewhere. You will find a pocket of Tableau or a pocket of Power BI or people using Excel for business intelligence. And more than that, all enterprises now have a plethora of different enterprise applications. So you'll be using Workday, you'll be using Salesforce, in addition to all of your data warehouse and data landscape, which means that you have additional data sources popping up all over the place and multiple tools where people need to access data and make decisions. And because most of these applications end up being siloed in the enterprise, so your Salesforce will go all the way from the Salesforce database through the Salesforce application layer to probably a dedicated reporting system on top of Salesforce. You'll have the same for Workday, the same for Oracle ERP. It means that getting combined data across those sources and finding insights across those sources is very difficult. So that diversity makes it difficult to make decisions and makes it difficult to know, A, where to find data, and B, where to act on that data once you have a relevant piece of analytics. And finally, enterprise analytics systems are complex. It's difficult to deploy enterprise analytics systems. It's difficult to join different databases together. It's difficult for users to be sure that they're getting a single version of the truth. And if you go into a meeting with a group of Power BI users and a group of Tableau users and a group of MicroStrategy users all looking at a sales revenue number, for example, chances are higher than most that each of those 3 users will have a different answer. And so that complexity leads to a difficulty in making decisions. It leads to fights over which version of the truth is correct. And it slows down the actual value of the data and getting to value with the data. So I've distilled 3 things that I believe are necessary in an enterprise analytics platform to allow the intelligent enterprise to flourish. The first one is everyone needs access to analytics to do his or her job better. And by everyone, I mean not just the data analyst, not just the data scientist, but people that are sitting behind cash registers, people who are the floor managers at fast food restaurants, people who are running an assembly line and need to know if they have enough widgets to get through to the next stage of their production run. So we need to find a way to provide contextual analytics to all of those users with a single version of the truth. The second one is we need to involve people in the enterprise in data by allowing them to quickly take action on that data and make business decisions. Too often I go into customers now and you'll point them to a dashboard that shows them what they should do next based on sales revenue and the demographics of the customer they're talking to and what the upsell capability should be for that customer. But in order to act on that data, they have to get out of the dashboard, they have to go into Salesforce, they have to remember what customer they were looking at in the dashboard, they have to find the opportunity they were looking at for that customer, and then they have to action that opportunity in a completely different interface. And just the way the human mind works is you're going to forget all of that stuff you saw on the dashboard by the time you get to the Salesforce interface, and you're not going to be able to make effective use of that data to make business decisions. So again, bridging that gap and shortening the distance between analytics and decision and action is key to the adoption of analytics in the enterprise. And finally, neither of those first 2 things will work unless people trust the data. I can't tell you how many times I go into a customer and they say, oh, I looked at that dashboard and it did tell me what to do next, but I don't believe the data. The data doesn't, either I don't believe it's certified, I don't believe it came from the proper source, or my colleague yesterday gave me a completely different number, or really my gut feeling is just a lot better than that dashboard and I'm going to go with what my gut feeling is. So unless you build a culture and a technological platform of trust around the data, the first 2 points will not work. So keeping those 3 points in mind and going back to the challenges of the intelligent enterprise that I talked about previously, we will address the pervasiveness of analytics in the enterprise by providing access to everyone and providing contextual tools that speak just to the right level of data literacy of the people we're talking to. We will address the diversity in the data and technology ecosystem by providing easy ways and contextual ways for people to take action on analytics of the data they just looked at in enterprise applications or in whatever tool they're using at the moment. And we will get around the challenge that enterprise systems are complex and data platforms are siloed in most organizations by providing a data hub and an overall semantic graph that provides trust in the data to end users and allows them to make decisions with confidence when they're presented with analytics. So let's look at some of the technologies that we're developing at MicroStrategy in order to address access for everyone, on data, and trust of analytics across the enterprise. Firstly, looking at pervasive access to data analytics. An interesting thing when we started to think about pervasive access to analytics is in the industry we've been concentrating in business intelligence for too long on the kinds of decisions that take weeks, months, and years to make. If you go to your data scientist, you're going to say, okay, we need a pricing algorithm for our insurance product. We have all of this demographic information. We know the payouts. The actuaries have said this. And they will spend a few weeks or a month coming up with an algorithm, measuring the results, and giving an appropriate pricing algorithm. So that's an appropriate use case for a business analyst or data scientist, those kind of decisions that take hours or days to make. The fact of the matter is, however, that other 70% of people in the enterprise are making decisions that only take seconds to make. They're making a decision, for example, for the person on the assembly line, do I continue with my production run this afternoon because I have enough supply chain, or do I stop and order new material? Or if you're in retail, for example, you make a decision standing in front of a client that because they bought these 3 products last week, they would probably be interested in this product this week, and I should try to position it to them. Those decisions take seconds and require an entirely different experience with data than what a data analyst or a data scientist would be used to. So the innovation that we are developing at MicroStrategy is a technology called HyperIntelligence. HyperIntelligence is a tool in the family of what we call zero-click analytics, or answers that find you. And it's a way to bring governed, single version of the truth data to applications that people use every day so that they don't have to do a context switch or go into a business intelligence tool in order to get the contextual data they need right now to make one of those split-second decisions. Now, HyperIntelligence is built on a deceptively simple concept, that of the card. Now, those of you that are old enough, and just looking out over the audience, I guess maybe I'm the oldest guy in the room, but you remember this concept of the 3.5 by 5-inch index card that we all used to have on our desk, and you had a thing called a Rolodex that you would flip around, and if you wanted to find information on a customer, you would flip your Rolodex until you found the name of the customer, you would look at the card, and it would probably give you some information about them, their phone number, their position at the company, what you last sold to them, what opportunities you have in place. Basically, all the information you would need to call that customer and make a sales call. Well, the HyperCard is exactly the same concept, except digital. And it can be about any concept that you might want data about in the enterprise. So it can be about an employee. Here we have an employee card that shows what department the employee is in, how long they've been with a customer, what their average performance rating was. Similarly, you can have a card about a customer showing their contact number, their activity state, how many open support cases they have. You can also have a card about an activity, say a support case in this case, or an account, or a product showing the sales of that product, how much stock you have on hand, anything you might need to know in the moment about that particular product. Or indeed a place. Here you have information about a piece of real estate or a business and what they've sold and so on and so forth. Now, the beauty of these HyperCards being digital and with the MicroStrategy platform and the single version of the truth and the Semantic Graph is the data on these HyperCards can come from multiple places with a single version of the truth. So on a customer card, for example, you could have information coming from Salesforce, combined with information coming from your support case handling system, coupled with information coming from your Oracle ERP, and to the end user, that all appears as a single card, and they don't even know where that data is coming from, so they get one version of the truth just in time. But the beauty of these cards is, once they're defined, they can be deployed in any enterprise application that people are using today. So we're avoiding that whole context switch of people needing to move from the action tool that they're in, be it Salesforce or Workday or ERP or even their email, to a BI tool, and then coming back to do the work they were trying to do. So if we look at HyperIntelligence on email, for example, by enabling HyperIntelligence on email, I can receive an email from my boss asking some questions about various customers, and by hovering over the customer names, I see the HyperCards come up in real time, and I can make a decision. So imagine if my boss said, "What's up with the opportunity at Nike?" and I see Nike in my email, I can hover it over it and see the status of that opportunity coming from Salesforce right there in my email and respond to my boss without having to take 2 or 3 minutes to go into Salesforce itself. You can do the same thing on the web, looking at customer information, looking at product information in a 10Q or a environment such as that. You can also have HyperIntelligence on productivity tools such as Excel. So you're able to hover over any column in Excel and get the HyperCard coming up with exactly that same single version of the truth. And finally, HyperIntelligence also works on mobile, where it's linked into your calendar. So for example, when a calendar entry comes up, I will see the HyperCards for the people that I'm meeting and be able to get information about them before I go into that meeting, or indeed about the customer when I'm going into those opportunities, so I have all the just-in-time information I need for that meeting. The other part of adoption and getting information out to everyone in the enterprise is every enterprise has multiple business intelligence tools. You're going to have a hard time finding an enterprise that only has one. And so we have a technology at MicroStrategy called Federated Analytics, where we're opening up the MicroStrategy Semantic Graph to all BI tools. So you can access our single version of the truth from Power BI, from Tableau, from Qlik, from our MicroStrategy tools, but also from Microsoft Office, and also from data science tools such as RStudio and, in this case, Python. Enabling immediate action on analytics goes to HyperIntelligence integration as well. So here we have Salesforce, for example. When I enable HyperIntelligence in Salesforce by enabling the cards over here in my browser, so I'll enable the employee card, the opportunity card, and the product card. When I go back into Salesforce now, I can hover over, for example, an opportunity and see the opportunity card coming from MicroStrategy immediately. I can do the same thing for a product. I can do the same thing for a customer, whatever I would like to do within the tool. And then go into quotes, hover over a quote in Salesforce, and I'll see the quote card coming up with information from data sources that not even be part of Salesforce. And that enables me to get the information I need to go in and do a quick approval of that quote. So after I get that information, I'm happy with the quote, and within Salesforce, I can go ahead and approve it. So this avoids me having to go into other tools to get the information I need to make an approval, and I can do it all in a single interface. I just want to talk a little bit about the RStudio integration as well. So we have RStudio integration now, which allows you to do a bi-directional integration of data coming from MicroStrategy into your data science tools. And so I'm not going to show the entire video in the interest of time, but we have built an integration for MicroStrategy that allows your data scientists to log into MicroStrategy, browse any of the governed data assets that we have within MicroStrategy and load them into RStudio, use those as the basis to find outliers, to do data science, to build algorithms, and load that algorithm back into the MicroStrategy platform where people can use it in their day-to-day analytics. So this lets you close the loop between the data scientist and the BI consumer in a way that your BI consumers are much more effectively using the insights that are being found by the data scientists. So trust. The entire aspect of trust is underpinned by the MicroStrategy Semantic Graph. Now, MicroStrategy has been in the industry for 30 years. We were the first company to really come up with an enterprise-wide semantic layer that covers all data sources. So in this diagram, you see a subset of the data sources that we support on the bottom, everything from ERP to NoSQL data sources to traditional data warehouses. And what the semantic graph allows you to do is to build a single version of the truth, a single semantic layer across those sources that joins them together, that allows you to ameliorate performance by building some things into cubes or not into cubes, depending on the speed of your underlying source, and have that all appear as a single version of the truth across all of your sources. What's nice about that is once that semantic graph is defined, you get exactly the same single version of the truth and the single version of results, whether you're producing a dashboard, whether you're producing self-service visual analytics, whether you're using third-party BI tools such as Tableau or Qlik or Power BI, whether you're using that data to train a data science algorithm, or whether you're building hypercards to get data out to the other 70% of your users. Which means that I can come into a meeting with a hypercard and say, I believe this is the status of the current opportunity with this customer. And my data analyst can come in with a dashboard and say, yes, I concur, that's the value of that opportunity, I'm getting exactly the same result. And even the data scientist can say, I believe you should be able to use my algorithm to calculate the next best upsell for that opportunity because I used exactly the same data to train that algorithm. Now, we're developing the semantic graph to include a number of things that are forward-looking as well. If you remember in the past, semantic layers were all about technical metadata. They were all about dimensions and measures and attributes and things that were just all about how you describe the data. Now at MicroStrategy, we're adding a number of different things into the semantic graph that will bring a different class of business metadata and allow machine learning and artificial intelligence to help with next best step as well. So we're providing the language of the business now. understanding what is a revenue metric, understanding what is a headcount metric, and how those should be handled differently in calculations. A 360-degree view of the data across all data sources, so allowing you to build a single version of the truth about what total headcount is, even when some of that definition is coming from Workday, for example, and some coming from, say, Oracle ERP or what your financial system is. Thirdly, the semantic graph also has a high degree of object reusability, which means you can start out with a sales revenue object split by customer, for example, and use that object to feed into a higher level object that would be next best upsell for that customer based on other demographics as well. So it's a very object-oriented, or if you will, Lego brick way of looking at building a semantic graph. Trust and governance. We're adding things that allow you to more easily govern the semantic graph as well. Things like identifying a field as personally identifiable information, or identifying a field as sensitive information, which lets you build business rules in for your business analysts where they will be prevented from creating a report, for example, if it contains personally identifiable information that isn't anonymized to a high level. Or alert your risk officer if someone is trying to build a report with salary information that's going to go out to the wrong people. So it allows you, again, to build that governance into the semantic graph. And finally, usage telemetry, which means actually measuring how the end user is using data in their day-to-day decisions and feeding that back into the semantic graph to build a better set of objects for the next person. Imagine if your salespeople were looking at a hypercard and a data science algorithm telling them what the next best sale is for the given customer. And then they simply record by clicking on the hypercard, was that sale successful or not? That information can be recorded automatically and fed back into your data scientist, who in the next iteration of the algorithm will make a much better algorithm based on real life results in the field on how the original algorithm was being used. That's what we mean by client-side telemetry. And finally, the semantic graph is open, meaning that the components can be used programmatically in any application that you build, be it a mobile application or be it in third-party data science or third-party business intelligence tools. So in summary, in order to provide 100% adoption of analytics in the enterprise, we need to provide those three things. Innovative tools that give everyone access to business intelligence and analytics, regardless of their level of data literacy. So not concentrating just on the analyst and the data scientist anymore, but moving out to people at the front line of the business who can benefit from data and actually benefit the business by recording what they're doing in that data, with that data, in a very easy, frictionless way. We need to involve people in the results of using data by recording what they're doing and allowing them to make very quick decisions without context changes using those just-in-time contextual analytics. And finally, it all needs to be built in a context and on a platform of trust and governed analytics that allows people to have confidence in the decisions they're making. So for more details on these technologies and for demos of them in certain use cases, you can visit us at booth 533, where we have some demos running as well. My colleague Matt will be speaking this afternoon on self-service governed data discovery with MicroStrategy and our semantic graph and how that works as well. And tomorrow my colleague Nick will be talking about governance and freedom and how to square the circle of having a governed enterprise semantic graph with providing freedom for people to find insights in the data and use true self-service business intelligence. So thank you for your time and enjoy Big Data London.